Hello, dog family. I'm Asia and I'm a dog trainer. And thanks so much for tuning in here on my channel. So, today, what would I like to talk about? So, I have some new location that I'm in, which is exciting. And I have actually started working with a team of dog trainers who focus specifically on positive dog training methods. And so, I wanted to speak a little more into what positive training methods are, how they can benefit you in your training journey, and just kind of revisiting some of the integration of positive training methods that I've had in the work that I was doing with the previous group I was working with. So, positive training methods. So, there is actually surprisingly a lot of controversy about positive training methods, about whether or not it works. The basic gist of it is it's using positive reinforcement to create classical conditioning for dogs to learn new behaviors. So, one example is the Pavlov's dogs, the bell for the food experiment, if you ever heard of that. So, basically, what it amounted to is these dogs heard a bell every time they got to associate with food. And so then it turned into where they would hear the bell and salivate as if they were eating the food. So they're like, "Oh, I love bells," So it made them like classically conditioned to associate the bell sound with food. Yay! And so a dog might normally not care about a bell sound or want to bark at a bell sound or something like that, and these dogs had that positive association. Um, so what it means in training is taking extra time to build that association through classical conditioning. Classical conditioning, for anybody who has used it in other ways, they would understand that it is a slow process. So it's literally like repetition, repetition, repetition. There's a joke in positive training methods trainer circles about like, man, how many times did that guy have to do that association with that bell? And, and what did he associate in his mind is kind of what some people like to joke about. But, it's less about kind of the whole experimental side of it and more about measuring the small wins of it. So, but for this reason, a lot of people in their home life and daily life when they're training will essentially just let it go or not follow through with positive training methods. And so that is where a lot of training groups will go in a different direction and essentially allow people to become over reliant on other tools. So, it's, as far as my personal philosophy, I prefer a blend of tools to kind of like stop the emergency happening, especially when we have dogs that are like lunging or dogs that are too big for their owners, essentially. Tools can be very effective for stopping that immediate need of like, I have to be able to control my dog on a walk. So an example of that would be like a prong collar. And these devices are great for just kind of bridging that gap of like, I can't even get my dog out the door without feeling like he's going to rip my arm off, versus I can actually take my dog out to go potty without feeling like it's going to be like a medical emergency pulled down on my face. So when they're being used correctly. So even with tools, there has to be an instructive process. So I definitely encourage you, don't just go cold get a training collar or whatever, like a prong collar, and then just be like, all right, it's going to have somebody who's a professional help you fit it correctly. That's really important. Have them teach you how to use it correctly, because overuse of these things have a whole other bad thing that happens where basically the dog will start to negatively respond to them, run away from you, all these different things. So we want to actually use a lot of positive training methods to actually condition them to appreciate the collar. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. So that's one piece of it. Is I like to see people not become overly reliant on the tool itself. So that's one piece of kind of the puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle is the training, the positive conditioning needs to be happening in addition to using tools, for instance, like a prong collar. So that over time, in a perfect world, the dog has internalized and practiced so much of the right way to behave that they don't need this pressure collar, essentially, which is what a prong collar is, to direct them to do the right thing by using force pressure, basically, that feels like a mama dog biting them, essentially. If my mom was yelling at me about something, which is what like a mama dog kind of bite equivalent would be, I'll be like, oh shoot. So, but we don't want to like always have to have them feeling that, if possible. Now, are there some cases where some dogs are never able to graduate off a prong collar? Sure. And frankly, it sometimes for the safety of the owner, because some folks that I've worked with over the years, have different physical needs or whatever, and just for everybody's safety, it just makes more sense to just go ahead and keep that dog in a prong collar just in case. And I have no judgment of that at all. In fact, like I encourage that if that's what's going to make it so that we can keep that whole situation safe for everybody. But for majority of cases, for majority of families, there is the physical ability and the time able to be put in and things like that to do this positive training method side of things, and that is really important to commit to the process. Now, what does the process look like? It's months. It can be, that's just the starting point of it, is months of repetition. However, day to day, it's not that bad, you guys. Like, it really isn't. It's literally just 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. Like, can do it a couple times a day, practice. It really doesn't take dogs are very bright and it really doesn't take nearly as much as you think. What makes it extra challenging though, is if the dog has other issues happening where they are just super nervous and they freak out if they hear noises when they go outside or something like that. That's kind of a whole other thing. But again, still need to get in the positive training methods mode to be able to classically condition them to learn over time. But again, in those moments, if they're going to try to bolt for home every time they hear a noise, then yeah, they might need a pressure collar of some form or some other sort of tool. It's one of those things that I'd highly advise having. If you have a special circumstance like that, highly advise having a professional, and maybe even multiple professionals, frankly. Get some second, third, fourth opinions. Why not? Just because trainers, we all have different experiences, different backgrounds, different levels of training, different kinds of training, different blends of training. And everybody's perspectives could be helpful to help you kind of like figure it all out for your individual dog's needs. So I hope that this message is helpful for you. I know it's kind of a lot of information. And I do want to do another video where I dive a little more into details of positive training methods, of other sorts of training methods. But definitely reach out to me with any questions, because this is a topic that I think is extremely interesting. And it is just so important for people to understand that it is doable, even though it feels like, oh my gosh, all I'm doing is repeating this thing over and over and over with the positive training methods cycle. Versus I put on my prong collar on my dog and magically, I hear that a lot, magic. It's like magic. The dog is responding now. Well, there's kind of this other whole process to it. So just keep with it. It's worth it. I'd say on average, within 3 months, you're really starting to see some good progress. For a lot of dogs, though, especially dogs that are overcoming traumatic histories, adoptions, some things like that, it can be quite a bit longer. It can be a year if we're having to kind of start from scratch of the dog even feeling comfortable in new situations, like going to farmers markets or going to new people's houses or things like that. There's a lot more to it that it's just a slow process, and we just go on their timeline. So I encourage you, just don't feel like there's a finish line to reach. There's no race to be won. If you're comparing against your neighbor's dog or your sister, your brother's dog or something like that, no, because you don't compare yourself to them. Or we shouldn't. I know all of us have compared ourselves to people, but they're individuals, just like I'm an individual, just like you're an individual. And that means there's its own little timeline, so I just want to encourage you with that. It can feel like a lot. But just remember, you only get maybe a decade, maybe a little more than that with your pup. And why not have it be something where you're learning and growing together, and you'll be amazed what they teach you as you're teaching them through positive training methods, processes, and just sticking with the daily work of it. So, all right. Well, thanks for tuning in, and do like and subscribe my channel if you like this kind of content. And I'll see you in the next video.